Hey everyone, I'm John Negroni, film editor for theyoungfolks.com, and I also host the movie review podcast Cinemaholics. I want to start by saying this will be a completely spoiler-free review of Eternals, and I feel like you all know me at this point. When I talk about a movie, I really try to avoid plot details, things that are going to get really beyond what you need to know, because you're going to watch the movie or not going to watch the movie. You should just sort of watch it, discovering as much of it as you can yourself. I had the pleasure of seeing this without experiencing any of the marketing. I might watch the trailer right after I do this, which will be fun. It's always fun watching a trailer for the first time after you see the movie, because then you get to say, I would have been spoiled on that. That wouldn't have been great. That said, I might talk about a couple things in this that you might not want to know that could be revealed by the marketing, but there are things that are not going to impact, your viewing experience, anything very specific. I'm not going to talk about things that would make you upset, like you missed out on a big portion of the film. So I'll try to be as vague as possible. Eternals. Eternals is the 26th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My goodness, so many of these movies at this point. This was actually supposed to be the 24th movie, but it was delayed a year because you know why. And hey, that's perfectly all right, because as we have seen with the other recent Marvel movies and the shows, this Phase 4, as they call it, so all the Marvel canon we've gotten since Spider-Man Far From Home in 2019, these movies have been practically interchangeable. I'm talking about Shang-Chi, Black Widow, WandaVision, Loki. You can kind of just watch these at any, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You could do an order to them if you wanted to, but they don't really connect or interconnect with each other that much at all. So it's actually kind of easy to go in any kind of order. It kind of worked out for Marvel in this case. They were able to work within the confines of a changing production year, if that makes any sense. So when it comes to timelines and what goes where and why, no need to worry about it. Eternals can just come out a year late, and that's fine. And on that note, Eternals is very much its own thing. Is a nice thing to say that is true, because and I'll say that has a lot to do with its Academy Award winning director Chloé Zhao. Zhao, of course, has been on a terrific winning streak as a director of independent films for some time now, which culminated in last year's Best Picture winner for her, Nomadland, which again, Nomadland would have technically come out after Eternals. Eternals should have come out, I think, right before Nomadland would have. Maybe Nomadland might have still premiered at TIFF. They were supposed to come out around the same time, basically. Nevertheless, Chloé Zhao is back with, I would say, that same independent spirit of presenting engaging, heartfelt characters in massive, heart-opening locations. That's Chloé Zhao. That's what you get with this director. So it fits in a way to give her these Marvel superheroes who are set up, the Eternals, to exist in the background of all the other movies, the universe itself. It makes a lot of sense because that's really been Zhao's wheelhouse as a director and a screenwriter, where her stories tend to examine the hidden lives of extraordinary people who might not seem all that extraordinary or special at first notice. So, okay, who are the Eternals of Eternals? That's the driving narrative of the film, actually. Like, who are the Eternals? What do they mean? It's not just a setup for my expected exposition, and I promise I won't get into it too detailed, but the Eternals are a group of very powerful beings from a planet called Olympia. You can pretty much compare them to Asgardians from Thor movies, at least in terms of how sturdy and capable they are. Like, you can't easily kill them, but they're not like immortal, but they live a long time, like Asgardians do. So these Eternals were sent to Earth 7,000 years ago, so like 5,000 BC, it's said in the movie. They were sent here on behalf of the Celestials. They've been mentioned in the Marvel movies before, not too much to this extent. I mean, we did get Ego in Guardians 2 as a Celestial, but he was kind of like a rogue Celestial. These are like the mainstream ones who really run everything. They're essentially Marvel-branded, all-powerful space gods. Anyway, we learn from a very jargony opening text crawl, which I hated, in the very beginning of the film, that the Celestials, they've been around since the very beginning. They employ the Eternals to protect life-inhabited worlds from a race of predatory creatures called deviants, which are essentially skinless, tentacle-clad Cerberus dogs, sort of. The Eternals themselves don't age. They're also gifted with very unique magical attributes. One of them can move super fast. Another can possess tons of people. One of them is basically Superman because he can fly and shoot laser beams out of his eyes. The movie even points this out in a very meta way, and that's not the only time it does this. This is a Marvel movie, so the filmmakers inserted a few offhand pieces of dialogue to lampshade the obvious question you might be wondering. If there are powerful beings like the Eternals just hanging around Earth all the time, why didn't they intervene with all the major events we've seen in the movies? Like they didn't try to stop Loki or Ultron or Thanos and so on. Now, the characters do address this a handful of times. It's almost as if the filmmakers watch, like, they're prepared. They know how CinemaSins works, right? And I would say mileage definitely varies on how well the movie succeeds or doesn't in putting that issue to bed. Like, the Eternals are here. They didn't do anything before. Just deal with it. And there are plenty of moments when it is kind of hinted that they did do things behind the scenes throughout history. But yeah, I'd say most of the historical revisionism in this movie, it's played for laughs most of the time, but it's not that clever. It does boost a lot of character chemistry. That's really why it's there. It's there to really lighten the mood, which can be very dour at times. But to be honest, a lot of like the jokes and the things they try to play around with, like we were here during this historical event and this historical event, it's nothing we haven't really already seen done better and more interesting in other movies. So even though the Eternals have been waiting around all of this time, their only call to action once they discover that the deviants have returned, and this is centuries after they were supposedly eradicated. So what gives? There's a lot of intrigue and mystery behind all of that, and the deviants are also more powerful than ever for mysterious reasons. So we essentially embark on a getting the band back together plot, where we start with Gemma Chan as this character named Cersei. She's the true heart of the group. She can change the properties of matter, so she can change like water into stone. She actually has what I think are like the most interesting powers in this movie, which is ironic because she's far from the most interesting character, but I'll get to that later. She's been living for a while with Sprite, who's played by Leah McHugh, who can create illusions, but she's always looked like a child despite her old age. Richard Madden plays Icarus, the aforementioned Superman, who everyone considers the strongest. He also has some romantic history with Cersei, but she's moved on and started dating somebody else, a museum curator played by Kit Harington. So you can make your Game of Thrones jokes there. So there really are a lot of other Eternals, and there are a lot of other characters. I'd be here eternally trying to discuss all of them in detail. So you can probably see why the runtime is 2 hours and 37 minutes. It's a mammoth. There's a lot of lore, mythology, and character outlining in this movie. There's also a lot of philosophy, existentialism, and in a good way, conflict being driven by the clashing of these ideas. And it takes time for the full stakes of the story to come into focus. We don't really know what's going on until a ways in. And when it does become the movie, like when the movie happens, I guess, Eternals becomes Marvel's Iliad. It becomes an ambitious, sprawling, globe-trotting epic that is more about the characters and how they interact when having to make decisions that will impact countless people. I really think that that's what they were going for. They were trying to make something really big, like a Greek epic. They were trying to take Greek mythology and all kinds of staples of historical mythology and fiction and trying to put the Marvel spin on it, which that's a cool idea. I think that that's a great direction for a Marvel movie. And there's also a good bit in here that could resemble some Bible stories, at least when it comes to themes about heavenly judgment and utilitarianism, which I guess also you get a lot of from Greek tragedy as well. But also what it means to be human and to love a human. Again, that is very Greek tragedy. Okay. But even if you are, in this case, like an Eternal, you're supposed to be above the concept of humanity. So yeah, it gets into some Blade Runner territory as well. I think this mostly works. My only issue, and I'll put, it's a thing with this movie, it's really hard to wrap your head around these characters having lived on Earth for thousands and thousands of years, like doing nothing. Like there's no driving purpose with these characters that really reveals itself. Like they get together and they're fun and they're quipping and they're having these deep conversations. But yeah, it was always in the back of my head during this movie, like, they're thousands of years old. I don't feel like they're thousands of years old. It's not really like the Old Guard, that Netflix movie with Charlize Theron. I thought those characters, it wasn't perfect about it. I didn't always feel like those characters were thousands of years old, but I did feel like they had lived, like they had been through a lot and they had been through a lot together. I didn't get that in this movie. I felt like these people maybe knew each other, like they were coworkers for like 10 years or something, like, yeah, you know, like a while. But I mean, I never got the sense they knew each other that well. I don't know. There was a missing ingredient there, I think. But honestly, back to the mythology stuff and the philosophy and the existentialism, I do think these are all really refreshing ideas and directions for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. They're also far more adult and mature, which is great. There's adult and mature stuff in this. There's actually a sex scene in a Marvel movie. It's kind of like, whoa, you know, you don't usually get that from a Marvel movie. I mean, not that it has to have that, but it's different, you know, and I think you could say Eternals can be enjoyed by younger viewers, absolutely, but this is one of the first and maybe only of these Marvel movies to be primarily geared toward an older, more mature, maybe smarter audience. I don't know if smarter is the right word, but yeah, especially because it really drags the audience along a lot of extended segments that can be really demanding if you're not all in with this story and these characters. I found it easy to follow, but not all the time. And if there were times when I was kind of getting lost in the lore, I'm sure other people might too. So yeah, there can be a little bit of a learning curve there. But again, I do think younger viewers can definitely enjoy it, especially diehard Marvel fans who are teenagers, that kind of thing. When the movie ended, I had this prickling thought in my head while I was waiting for the inevitable post-credit sequences, which are neither here nor there. And please don't be that person who brings them up in the comment section. That can all wait. I wondered to myself at the end of this movie, what was this all for? And it's funny because if I ask this question after I see most Marvel movies, I'm not usually going to find a very satisfying answer beyond having a good time with an exciting movie. I watch Ant-Man, good time, exciting movie. That's kind of it. But I think the reason it's standing out to me with Eternals is because this movie has much higher aspirations. It doesn't want to just be good, exciting, and in some ways I should say it's trying to be a precursor to some new big cosmic stuff in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think Zhao and the other screenwriters, they don't just want that. They want us to feel something while watching this. They want us to really think. They want us to have discussions about this movie. Well, here goes. Coming out of Eternals, I found myself kind of disappointed with most of the fine details in this movie. My main issue is the climax, which really, it pays off an entire movie of doom and gloom and inevitability, which I was liking a lot. I was liking the stakes of this movie. But then it pays it off with half-explained convenience, really like shortcuts to everything that happens, bizarre character choices and actions that have almost nothing to do really with the meaty debates, the substantial debates these characters are having along the way. The whole way through this movie, I'm like, man, this is a tough problem to solve. I can't wait to see how they solve this problem. And then once we get to what needs to happen for the movie to progress, I was really left wanting. I really thought everything was just very either unexplained or explained in a very half-baked way. I think part of the problem might lie in how Cersei, again played quite well by Gemma Chan, becomes less and less interesting as the movie progresses, which I was so sad to see. In the beginning of this movie, she's actually fascinating as this eternal being who manages to love someone and be in a committed relationship. Somebody who is human and mortal, I should say. That's the character played by Kit Harington. Even though she knows that they can't be together forever. She's, as I said before, she's the heart and soul of this group. She's also the main character of this movie. She's the main POV. I think we get more with her than anybody else. But as we see more and more characters coming in, the script tightens Cersei up. It makes her kind of stiff, and it makes her a reactionary observer until she isn't at the very last minute. I don't know. I think that they were trying to make a big, larger-than-life hero character out of her, and some stuff was kind of missing, I think. And I'm more than happy to see Chan return to the MCU after she had a very small role in Captain Marvel, and she's not a weak link in this ensemble, far from it. There just seems to be a lot missing from her, and a few other people in this movie, quite frankly, because they had to cram so much in. We have Kumail Nanjiani, for example. He's kind of the comedic relief, although he's not like a full-on, he's not Sokka or anything like that. But at one point in this movie, he makes a massive choice that might have made way more sense if there had been more time spent with him, setting this decision up, showing us really who he is underneath it all. Same goes with the leader of the Eternals, played by Salma Hayek, who we really don't get nearly as much time with her as we probably need to establish her driving motivation, which in this movie is so key to really how everything is supposed to play out over 2.5 hours. We don't get much. And which is weird to say, because earlier I was saying this movie is so much. It has so much it's trying to pull off. So I am sympathetic to the ambitions of this movie. Not an easy thing to do, and there's a ton of effort being made here. I do not deny that. That said, many people, I suspect, are going to wonder if Eternals might have been better served as a limited series with way more room to just breathe. The effects are certainly really polished for the big screen. This is a big screen movie, though I would argue the line between cinematic and at-home viewing continues to really dwindle in terms of what audiences expect from everything they watch. No matter the format, they want blockbuster, at least for this kind of thing that they're going to watch. And on that note, I think the soundscape and the overall score, perfectly fine. Now, nothing remarkable, I thought. Nothing very memorable either. The action choreography is usually decent. It's really hard to believe, though, that anything happening on screen is real within the parameters of what's real in this world, if that makes any sense. I guess the art direction, it's a bit desaturated and bland, particularly when it comes to the design of the deviants, the costumes of the Eternals. It's honestly the same issue I had with Shang-Chi, almost to a T, where the green screen quality of the magical mayhem happening just doesn't quite connect with what the director is trying to accomplish in terms of what's the tone of this movie, how does it function, what are we trying to say here. And I'm not saying Eternals is an eyesore, it really isn't. It's actually quite nice to look at about half the time, especially when you consider the scope of what had to be shot, where they had to pull off everything. There's so many locations and time periods. There's even a whole cosmic side of this movie they have to throw in. So yeah, it's well done by and large, but yeah, you can definitely see a lot of holes in the armor of this movie. Considering how long I have gone on about Eternals at this point, hey, it can't be said that the film is dull or paper thin, that isn't much to get into. Clearly there is, and as you can maybe painfully see, the movie does spark a lot of discussion, good or bad. I firmly believe that if Marvel is going to keep this up, if they're going to continue their uninterrupted rise to global pop culture dominance and prosperity, particularly at the box office, they have to try new things. That's clearly what they're trying to do here. They're throwing in something experimental, which I really appreciate. They have to take risks like this. They have in the past, and it's paid off for them handsomely with movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok, which respun everything you would expect from a Marvel movie, but in a way that people really loved. I don't know if this is going to be that movie. I don't think the risk is going to pay off for absolutely everyone in the same way. And I would also say it's probably not best if we get many more Marvel movies trying exactly this. But hey, who could really replicate Chloé Zhao anyway? There's a small comfort knowing that there probably never will be a film or Marvel film like this one. Even if you end up hating it or finding it completely forgettable, it is a unicorn or Pegasus, or pick your mythological creature. So yeah, I'm about half and half with this movie. As much as I'd like to lean slightly positive, I can't avoid the fact that by the end of Eternals, I felt nothing. And that's odd considering how with the film I was up until that point. The pacing isn't amazing. There are actually some dead zones here and there, but I was there in this story the whole way through, waiting to see what would happen next. It's a testament to the characters, the performers here, how they're written, how they're interacting with each other. They're making everything feel more urgent and interesting than it is once you really inspect it after the fact. And it means the story, there are a lot of arcs that they have to resolve. And when you resolve the arc, that has a lot to do with how I know I'm going to personally leave the film and look back on it and decide, was the journey worth the destination? And at this point, I'd say no, it wasn't. But it's not as if the journey was unbearable or irredeemable. It just simply was. And that's about it. Though I will end with one exception to that. And I will say my favorite character in this movie. And that is Brian Tyree Henry as Fastus. I will not say anything else. He is simply everything to me in this movie. Yeah, that's all I'll say. He's great. Movie could use way more of him. Eternals will be available to watch exclusively in theaters starting November 5th in the United States. It's a big movie with a big budget of $200 million. It's going to be really fascinating to see how it does as Disney and Marvel's newest franchise starter after Shang-Chi. I'm sure I'll have even more to say about it by the time we review on the Cinemaholics podcast. That's going to be coming up, so be sure to subscribe there if you haven't already. And if you think there's anything I missed or that I should talk about regarding the movie on a later date, please use the comments below. Let's make that happen. But yeah, that's it. Long one from me, but I hope that journey was worth the destination for you. So until then, I'll see you next time.